Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Tuesdays with Tiffanie. This week's going to be a little bit different than our prior 2 weeks. This week, we actually received questions directly from you that we're going to answer. We have a variety of topics to cover. So we're going to have a little bit of a campaign update, and we'll talk about topics that range from the pre-K waitlist to traffic in Hoboken to the menacing helicopters that we're experiencing right now. So with that, I'll reintroduce my campaign manager, Al Benninghoff, and he,
Okay.
like normal, is going to be our host tonight. So with that, I'll hand it over to Al.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tiffany. Great to be here. First of all, a lot going on with the campaign. You want to give everybody an update about the team?
Yeah, really exciting news. As of this morning, we've expanded our team again. As everyone may remember, a couple weeks ago, Liz Urtecho, my good friend and just longstanding like pillar of our community, threw her hat into the ring to run on Team Fisher as a at-large city council candidate. Woohoo! And couldn't be more excited. Last night, she had her amazing kickoff event. It was very well attended. We were just surrounded by people that really care about Hoboken and are excited about a new leadership that really puts Hoboken and residents first. The amazing Bev Savage, who people may know as the former executive director of CASA, which is an organization in Hudson County that supports children in foster care. She's incredible. She was the one who announced Liz last night and couldn't have said enough good things. Lurking in the corner last night was a familiar face and someone who we all woke up to that announced this morning that he is running for at-large city council, and he's also running on Team Fisher, and that is former city councilman Dave Mello. Dave Mello is someone I've known for a long time. He's amazing. He's such a good man. He's done so many things for Hoboken. He ran on Team Zimmer for 2 terms. I believe he was on the council from 2009 to 2017, and he really led a number of big initiatives. There's a number of like big handprints that he was behind, or projects that he was behind that has his big handprints on it. One is the Southwest Park. He championed and was the quarterback of that project. When we think of the 770 Plaza and the Damon Murray Gym, that whole project, he was the champion of that as well. And also something that I learned that I didn't realize was he actually was the one that was also the quarterback champion or helped lead was the creation of our hop service that so many people in Hoboken rely on. So he brings so much to the table. He's lived here 27 years. He's raised his 2 lovely daughters uh, in Hoboken. One's first year in college, one's in 7th grade. He's been married to his wife, Stacy, who I love as well. So I couldn't be more excited. You have a shared vision of really just putting residents first and, getting rid of all the crappy politics and really just making this about surrounding yourself with smart, good people that get things done, deliver for Hoboken, and embrace all great ideas. So, really excited. We still have one more at large candidate left that we're in the process of talking with people. If anyone out there is interested, let me know. We're a little bit early stage on that. And then we also have identifying someone to run in the 6th ward for the special election to step into the seat that former councilman and my best friend vacated last year when she passed. So, anyway, a lot of good news for the campaign. Very excited and people were just thrilled at Dave's announcement. So we have a lot of momentum.
It is tremendous to see the knowledge and experience on Team Tiffany at the moment. It is great.
Yeah.
Uh, and you guys gel so well. I can't wait to get both of them on Tuesdays with Tiffany. It's
Yes.
going to be
Yes.
great. Uh,
Exactly.
we experimented for the first time, got questions from real people who live in
Yeah.
Hoboken. So you ready for some questions, Tiffany?
I am
Tuesdays
ready
with
for
Tiffany.
questions. I
All
am
right.
ready for questions.
The first was, and I think this is apropos, someone asked about the low-flying helicopters in Hoboken and what's being done. And I know you know.
I do. So it's been a pain, and it's been a pain for probably the last decade. I was actually going through emails recently and looking, searching my emails for the word helicopter, and it amazed me that it actually went back. The complaints went back to when I wasn't even on the city council. I was just the board president of the Hudson T building, back in 2012, 2013. Like these low flying helicopters were a problem, but they've just gotten so much worse, really with after COVID, there was a sudden like push with tourism, and it's really the tourist helicopters. They come out, they fly low. As everyone knows, we had a terrible tragedy a few weeks back where a helicopter just kind of broke apart in the middle of the air and took the lives of a young family visiting from Spain and a decorated a decorated veteran and former Navy SEAL. So, excuse me, it and there was a lot of concern, not only with the nuisance aspect of it, but quite frankly, the safety aspect of it. That plane crash easily could have happened over any neighborhood. That plane was flying, all over the place, over Jersey City, over Hoboken. So a lot of people are on edge. The challenge is, what can you do? It's governed by the FAA. The airspace is governed by the FAA. A lot of the helicopters we know, the tourist helicopters, are coming out of a helipad in Kearney. This is a helipad in Kearney that isn't bothering the neighbors in Kearney because they're flying away from Kearney. So it's difficult to get kind of support to make changes when the leadership is sitting in another town that isn't bothered by it and asking them to make changes for a town that they don't have an interest in. So we have a ton of advocacy. I've been part of the emails with the mayor, Mayor Doyle of Kearney. She's been open to having conversations with Craig Guy, our county executive, to see if there is something they can do. It really is about applying the appropriate kind of pressure, on this topic to that town. The original approvals for that heliport apparently was reliant on statements that said they wouldn't actually have a tourist helicopter business. So there's more of a dialogue to be had there and see if there is something that we can do to kind of minimize the flights coming out. I don't know if anyone notices, but the mayor announced. The mayor announced that he's filing a lawsuit against the FAA today. And while I think it shows action. Personally, I just think it's a headline grab leading into his election. It's not really a lot that we can do. There's not a lot he can do as a Democratic mayor filing a lawsuit with the FAA. And importantly, it's like a really expensive prospect. And I don't necessarily think that we shouldn't participate in some sort of advocacy and potential action to make change. But having Hoboken bear 100% of the costs on this issue, when the reality is it's not just Hoboken, it's Jersey City as well. And we're facing like a huge tax increase right now. So, we have a Republican president who's already said he's filing a lawsuit against Hoboken on a number of other issues. Well, not a number, on our status as a welcoming city. I just don't know the real I don't know the efficacy of filing a lawsuit against the FAA and whether that will be helpful. Senator Raj Mukherjee is looking to make a state law change that would limit the number of launches for tourist helicopters out of Kearney. They think that that may be litigated, but they're still moving forward with it to try and put that in place that would at least give us some relief. I went down and testified in Trenton, on that. They had a couple weeks ago, they had a hearing and they got bipartisan support out of the committee hearing. So now it's going to ultimately go to the floor for a vote. So there's progress being made. This is a really, really difficult issue. But what I would say is that we need as many people as possible to be part of it. So there's the Stop the Chop group. There's I think Blue Skies of Hudson County is another Facebook group, and people should just participate in those groups as much as possible. And I will absolutely continue, to fight on this issue, but I don't have a better answer other than we'll keep fighting. And I understand in detail what the issue is.
Yeah, and also I think for the people of Hoboken, um, you're not interested in doing the chest puffing piece. You're interested in taking action.
So, exactly,
All right.
exactly.
Apropos into transition, we had talked a little bit about rebuild by design last week, and somebody asked another question about it. They said that they're asking, is construction stalled?
So it is, but not for very long. Um, Couple things happened. One is a lot of the resources got redirected to the southern part of Hoboken on the Rebuild by Design project. That ended up requiring a couple shifts. You know, they were working much longer days, and then they had a huge number of problems and the traffic down there. You know, they had to get things done quickly in order to address what was going to be a ridiculous bottleneck and nightmare for Hoboken that we didn't want to continue. Second, I spoke with the DEP yesterday. They're having a meeting on this tomorrow, actually. They need to, they were waiting on some materials and now they're waiting on a step that they need to take and talk to the city about. I don't have an answer anymore on what that is, but we hope to have more information tomorrow. So by the time we get to Tuesdays with Tiffanie next week, I'll have an answer and I'll probably have an answer that I can put in a newsletter before then. So if anyone is watching this, feel free to send me an email at tiffany@tiffanyforhoboken.com or just go to my website, tiffanyforhoboken.com, and sign up for my emails. This is the kind of thing that I will always provide updates, you know, in my newsletters.
Awesome. All right. Well, something to keep tabs on. Another development thing. Someone was asking about stop signs at Park Avenue between 5th and 10th. They were asking if we could add them.
The simple answer is yes. It is so frustrating to me that every year we take an approach that we do one stop sign at a time. And I know that generally that is what the state kind of requires, but I personally believe we should take a kind of more strategic approach and we should be going to the state DOT, sitting down and talking to them about and making an appeal for all of our internal intersections. Because they really all operate the same way. There's no difference between an 8th Street intersection and a 9th Street intersection on Park Avenue. There just isn't in terms of the volume of pedestrians, the volume of children, the volume of cars, the volume, like all of our internal intersections basically operate the same. And we should get a blanket approval to put stop signs in, you know, wherever we need them. So the simple answer, I think the question was, we don't have a stop sign, I believe, from, was it 5th Street, maybe to 10th, and we need to at least have one by Brant, and the answer is absolutely, and I will fight to have more stop signs. I personally think we should have stop signs on, you know, at every intersection, internal intersection in Hoboken.
Yeah, a comprehensive approach sounds like it would be a smart thing to
Yeah.
do.
The one thing I just want to add, because I don't know if people really understand this, in order for us to get a stop sign, we have to effectively demonstrate there's a need for a stop sign. And demonstrating a need means we have to do a warrant analysis, we have to do traffic counts, and we do that. And when it's on a county road, like Park Avenue is a county road, we'd have to do it in conjunction with the county, and they're always supportive of it. But like, what we should do is do traffic counts. We should put in like, you know, either the entire city and do traffic counts on the entire city, or do an entire north south and do traffic counts all the way up and down the north south, and really get kind of approval for each one of these roads on a more strategic basis. So we typically 9 times out of 10 we get approval, and on the 10th time I don't know why we don't get approval. We should really push to understand so we're solving for pedestrian safety. And the other thing about warrant analysis is the analyses are really car focused, they're not pedestrian focused. And I'll give you an example. On North Sinatra Drive and Constitution, right in front of Pier 13, you know, we've needed a stop sign there, right? Because we have so many pedestrians. So it doesn't matter if we have 5,000 cars or 5 cars. If the cars are whipping through there fast, the conflict is with a huge number of pedestrians during the summer, especially on weekends. Well, the way a warrant analysis works is we actually measure the number of cars during like peak times, and peak times are like commuter times. And if you think about it, our, you know, imagine Tuesday morning at 8:30 in the morning or Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Is that peak for the pedestrians that come, you know, from there? The answer is no. So like how warrant analyses, the one size fits all, you know, warrant analysis makes no sense. So we've not been able to get a stop sign there. We had to come up with, you know, other solutions, which was raising the entire intersection and narrowing the traveling lines, putting in a bike lane just to kind of give the appearance and get cars to slow down in a different way, just because we couldn't get a warrant analysis, because warrant analysis are geared only towards volumes of cars. It's super frustrating. I
That
know,
does sound
right?
frustrating.
It
Yeah.
is super frustrating.
All right, I didn't have some people couldn't see my expression, but I'm sitting here with that
Yeah,
like with the face like why?
yeah,
Seems
yeah,
like one of those government red tape things that
it is.
a leader could help help with. Uh, so it's a good transition though, because another person asked about your rollout of your plan, where you had talked about e-bikes and pedestrian safety, but not the dangers of car traffic. And I thought maybe this would be a good time for you to address that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different viewpoints about safety and like road safety. Um, you know, there's one way, which is everyone should do their part, right? People should do their part, bikes should do their part, cars should do their part. And then there's no other argument that says really only cars should do their part because when cars hit bikes or hit people because they're so big, they're like killing machines. So we really should only focus on eliminating cars. And that's not my viewpoint. I totally agree that cars are what kill. I totally buy into the fact that, cars are 1, 2, 3 tons, depending on the size. And we need to make sure we're doing everything to make them safe. And I completely agree that we, for a variety of reasons, when we live in an urban town like ours, that we should be thinking about how to minimize cars. But eliminating cars without replacement transportation in an occupied city that relies on cars, I don't believe is realistic. So we have to kind of do two things at one time, right? One is we really just need to make sure our streets are as safe as possible, and we have between street design and signage and just developing a culture of safety, that we are really focusing on cars following the rules and through enforcement, right? We have very little enforcement. So we have cars and we have to make sure those cars are following the rules. And there's a lot more that we can do. Um, but I do think we also need to think about additional public transportation, right? Like how can we make it easier for people to get around Hoboken where they're not reliant on cars, right? So um, and why do people how do people use their cars? Are they mostly using their cars to drive around Hoboken? Or are they mostly using their cars to come in and out of Hoboken? Like, I think we really need to understand that better. But I do know that, people say that we're a walkable city. And I think we're a walkable city, but we're not a walking city. Like I live in Northeast Hoboken. And for me to get from Northeast Hoboken to Southwest Hoboken, it's a 30 to 40-minute walk. And I can do it. Well, actually, I can't do it right now because of my broken ankle. But normally, I can do it. Um, but would I go and do a 40-minute walk to drop something off for that will take me 5 minutes and walk all the way back? Probably not, right? But so what are my alternatives? Well, right now my alternative is to drive my car. I could ride my bike. I'm not someone who rides the bike in the winter. I'm not going to ride the bike in the rain. But we don't really have an easy solution to get longer distance, within our city. And when we compare it to cities like, New York City or other cities that really have a reliable um, public or public transportation within the city. Like we have the hop, which is amazing. We have the buses that really just go north south on Washington Street. But as the city has grown and the population has grown, we haven't really come up with a form of transportation that works for young families, right? Like I gave the example. I don't have young children, but I watch my neighbors that have small children and they have strollers. Like, are they going to walk from Northeast Hoboken, to Southwest Hoboken? Like, that may be a challenge. A, it's a challenge because our sidewalks aren't smooth, and B, that's a long time to have two small children like walking, et cetera. And it would take even longer potentially than me. So, like, there's such an opportunity to think more about how we can get better public transportation to go within Hoboken that we don't currently have. And I think that pegs with not just getting rid of cars, but minimizing cars and creating a new culture of safety. It kind of all weaves together. So going back like to this question, we have to do a lot more with cars. I completely agree that cars when they hit people and they hit bikes, that's when they do the most damage. But that doesn't eliminate the issue with e-bikes that people are feeling a lot more right now because we don't feel as many cars are being reckless. What we feel is more e-bikes. There's just an opportunity to do so much more to improve safety across the board. That's what I think.
There is, and as technology changes, I think, cities have to adapt to them, right?
Yeah, and as our
Uh,
population changes and our population, not only the volume, but like where they live, right? Like we had an entire west side of Hoboken and northwest Hoboken that for the most part just didn't have as much population as it has now or it's about to have, right? So, I'll give an example. Between 2010 and 2010 and 2020, we had a 20% growth in our population, and the majority of it was on the north end, north and kind of west. And like when I first moved into this building, we were the only building that was open. When I came on the city council in 2015, there were no buildings on the south side of 15th Street. They've all been built. Half of the northern part of Shipyard has been built. An extra Maxwell building was built. So we just had these like large, big, dense buildings that added a lot of population into the north end. And what was happening was, we had the 126 bus that was just starting at the PATH train that went up Washington Street. By the time it got to the bus stops at the northern part of Washington Street, the buses were all full. And so anyone who lived up, in the northern end couldn't get on the bus. So I literally sat and I met with New Jersey Transit multiple times. I demanded that they come. I mean, not demanded in a negative way, but I like really emphasized and advocated for them to come and do bus counts. And they knew. So it wasn't an ask that they weren't, beginning aware of, but they came and they did bus counts. And what they did as a result of that is they created the 126 bus that now when it comes back from the city, it turns across 11th Street and it comes up empty from 11th and it picks up all of that, the additional population on the north end. And they did something very similar for the Clinton Street and Willow Avenue buses because, again, we just had so many really ridiculously long lines on the north end that they were able to get these buses that kind of skipped the downtown and started uptown to just kind of balance out ridership. And that's what we need to do. Like when we think about Hoboken, we need to think about how do we put some sort of transportation or amend our transportation that really makes it easy for people to get all over Hoboken without using their car. So lots to
yeah,
do, lots of opportunity. Super
I
excited, lots of
I know.
opportunity.
It's amazing because that just demonstrates what can happen when you have somebody who actually listens to the constituents, recognizes a
Yeah.
problem, and then advocates and pushes through the bureaucracy to make action
And
happen.
and honestly, and think strategically, right? Like we have a mayor right now who is an opportunist. He's an opportunist and he's transactional and he runs the city like a campaign. So he's not thinking long term, right? He's not thinking how the pieces fit together. He's thinking how the piece fits into his own ability to be reelected. We don't need that anymore, right? We need someone who thinks strategically. That I went to college, I got my degree, my MBA I actually got in strategic management, right? Who knew that I'd be having this conversation as a council person wanting to think strategically? But it is like we have so many moving parts that relate to each other, and we need to figure out how we can accomplish a lot of goals by thinking, casting a wide net. So huge, huge opportunity. I tell people this all the time. Whenever they talk to me about any issue, I just say, you know what? It's solvable. That is so solvable. We can't have a rational conversation right now because we don't have an administration that is willing to engage on any topic that is unrelated to, campaign and ambitious aspirations. But when you have a mayor that's sitting there that wants to talk on all of these topics, like there's such an opportunity and it's the prospect is so exciting. So this is when I smile and get most excited.
That's it. Um, a complete heel turn because we're going to do a complete question change because of the next one. But that was a great discussion, and that's why people should tune in for Tuesdays with
Yeah.
Tiffanie. Um, but so the next question, somebody was asking about the pre-K wait lists, and they're curious what can be done about it.
Yeah, so I got that question and it's interesting. The short answer is I spoke with Dr. Johnson and she's pretty confident that the wait list will be cleared. How it ends up clearing, we'll start with that, is they do home visits to just confirm that anyone who has applied is lives where they say they're going to live. Given it's a free program, you just want to make sure. And people fall off the list for that reason. You also have people that move, they put themselves on the list and then they move by the time school starts. And they, or people just make different choices. They decide to put their child in a different program. So that kind of flushes itself out. They've had a wait list of this year. The wait list was 68. It's down to 65. They've had a wait list the last couple years that have exceeded 100, where everyone has been able to get a seat because of this thing that happens. For everyone's benefit, she told me there were 900. Let me actually, I think I'm checking my text right now. There are 900 children in our free pre-K program this year. Um, Hold on, give me 1 second. Yeah. So 975 seats across two classes. When I first was on the city council, and we were bumping into this wait list. It was a top issue when I, not when I ran, because we were already in the fall, so the kids were already in their seats, but that 2016 spring, um, I suddenly was hearing from parents that were flipping out because they were on the wait list, and exactly what we're hearing now. And at the time, I believe there was only 500 seats. So we've seen between the two classes, it was about 250 in each one. So we've seen basically a doubling of our pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 in the last 10 years. And people have to remember in Hoboken, we have this free program, and this free program was given to us, um, you know, well, a while back, because at the time, the majority of the kids that were in our district schools qualified for free and reduced school lunch. So it was really meant to be like a subsidy of sorts to support a community that had, a large population of low income children. And what's happened over time is our demographics have changed. We still have a population of low income children, but with the growth and just the significant expansion of families that are staying with their children, we're just seeing, and property values, et cetera, going up, you're seeing a lot more economic diversity in our schools. Um, and so what happened along the way is, in the beginning, is we suddenly had people that did have means and did have choices were getting slots that some of the low income families were not, because it's lottery based. So the intent of the program was to be available for our low income families, but because you couldn't put income restrictions on it, and it was a lottery, and we had so many families that were moving in, because it was, not only was it free, people just really loved the program. They thought it was a well run program. They were pretty excited about it. But the result was the potential to bump families that actually really relied on it and didn't have options and didn't have mobility. Dr. Johnson at the time, like when, and she would go looking for vouchers in other towns that weren't being used, that had a similar program or had any, and she was always able to get them to cover the number of kids. But what happened, what she told me a few years ago, is what ultimately ended up happening because of our growth, is the state finally said, the constraint was no longer the vouchers themselves. The constraint became the physical space. And the state basically said, if you can accommodate them from a space standpoint, we will just fund it. Don't worry about vouchers. So the Board of Ed quickly absorbed all of these kids into the schools. Because the state was just going to pay for it. And then suddenly we just didn't have space anymore. So, what the Board of Ed has done over the last several years is try and move the pre-K programs out of the schools that they own. There's a lot more flexibility in terms of the type of space a pre-K program can be in. There's a lot more restrictions on what is required for classroom space that begins in kindergarten. So what they've been trying to do, because we've had this massive enrollment growth, especially at the lower age group level, is try and find while they're doing a long-term facilities plan for additional space at the upper level, which I'll get to. At the lower level, they've been identifying like retail space, like ground floor retail, some of these big new developments where they're taking that space and putting pre-K into those spaces. So I mean, it's crazy the amount of growth and how it's going through our schools. Dr. Johnson told me that next year, we're going to have 700 kids in the high school in 4 classes, and that's about 170 kids per class. And by way of example, last year's senior class had less than 100. And so this year's senior class is the tip of the enrollment wave that started in 2010, and every grade behind it is bigger and bigger. So last year, the junior class was, let's say, 150-ish. This year, last year, the junior class was like 150, give or take. maybe 145, and the senior class was around 100. This year, that junior class moved up, so now we have the 140, 150 in the senior class, and every single class behind it is bigger. So it's just it's a tough issue, but I can tell you that Dr. Johnson is on it. It doesn't make parents completely happy because they're trying to make plans for the fall. You know, they don't. She can't guarantee spots. She's just confident they should be able to get them. And they're just working through it. So hopefully these parents will have some more certainty over the next couple weeks.
I think it certainly matters, you know, when you talk about the history that like traditionally the wait list is cleared and it's been okay. And also I think reassuring to parents because you know they're worried about the future of their kids. It's a fundamentally concerning thing that draws on their heart that someone has an eye on the future. You're talking about
Yeah,
the tip of the graduation thing. I think that's reassuring in and of itself and reason for people to go vote for Tiffanie in November to make sure that somebody with that knowledge is elected, you know, as the mayor. That's all we had
yeah,
for
I
questions
agree
this week.
wholeheartedly.
That's all we have for questions this week. But Tuesdays with Tiffany happens every week, so people continue to ask questions. They can submit them either in the YouTube video or through the email newsletter that Tiffany sends out. And Tiffany, how can people find you moving forward?
They can find me on my website at tiffanyforhoboken.com. They can email me at tiffanyforhoboken.com. You can go to, I still have a lot of content just because I'm an existing city council person. I have a ton of content on Hoboken2ndward.com. That's Hoboken, the number 2ND ward.com. That has like all my content for the last, decade. And as I think I've said before, I just haven't changed. Like I've the issues that mattered in Hoboken 10 years ago, many of them are still the same issues. My position really hasn't changed. We've done our best to advocate and make improvements along the way. And what I'm really excited about is, I've probably worked harder than almost any council person. I've delivered more for my ward than any other council person. And I just imagine like what I will get to do and what I will get to deliver as mayor, where I actually can direct the resources of the city. I can work better with a city council as opposed to working against a city council, which our current mayor has done. Like this is super exciting, and I'm hoping everyone just comes along for the ride. So
That's it for today, and we'll see everybody next
awesome!
week.
All right, thank
Bye.
you. Thanks everyone. Thanks Al.